All right, jingle off. Right, welcome everybody to this panel discussion right now. So we are discussing artificial intelligence, and this is a topic that you may these days also get questions from your family and friends. Is like AI taking over? Will there be any jobs in the future anymore? Do we all get unemployed, etc., etc.? And I think for this reason, it is a very good idea to talk a little bit about the potential on the one hand side, but also what are current restrictions and limitations to understand where this topic is moving. And I'm very happy that we have the experts in the panel, and I would like to start with Christian. Christian, so at Microsoft, you're dealing with artificial intelligence technologies, and I would be very curious to learn a bit what is possible. How will things be like in 10, 20 years? What is the great vision where AI is moving? And what does that mean for us as developers?
Okay, so no pressure then. That's good. I'm working not directly with the AI team. I'm actually more of a fan of AI, but I'm a developer for 20 years, and I see AI as the future of computing at the moment. I think AI is the big umbrella term. That's the marketing term that we have right now. It's the new Ajax or the new DHTML. Everything is AI, no matter what it is. Whereas like proper artificial intelligence, how we try to make it academically simulating human intelligence, we're still far ahead, far away from that. But we're really good at churning through eons and oodles and oodles of data to find patterns, to find predictive things, to make automate things much easier that used to be hard work for humans to do. And that's why I'm getting excited about it. I mean, everybody's super afraid of automation, of taking jobs away, but I think it's actually a natural evolution of society that boring and repetitive tasks that humans are bad at are being done by computers. So we're actually, my big worry about artificial intelligence is that we're already much further ahead in technological innovation than in social innovation. We still strive to actually get jobs that people think they have to work to live, rather than just machines doing the work for us. We could be in a world where machines do most of our work with us, but it's not properly distributed. So my big impact in AI and in artificial intelligence and machine learning is that it's not democratized yet. It's a massive hype at the moment. Everybody gets a lot of investment once they mumble deep learning algorithm in a pub in San Francisco. But it's not everybody's using it. Everybody is being used as a data source by artificial intelligence systems, but we don't get the insight into it and we don't get the data out of it. I think it's time that people take ownership of that and understand that we're being data mined by all kinds of services, and deep learning algorithms make up personas of us that are not us, and we should be more interested in the outcomes of it and more invested of understanding that this is here to stay. It's not a fad, it's not going away in the near future, and it's a dangerous thing because a badly trained deep learning algorithm is just making our biases even worse. So we don't want to have a separation of like where rich people have their robot butlers at home and other people have to do terrible jobs because they just make sure that these systems exist.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much for this assessment. So Charlotte, maybe I turn to you. So Christian used the term deep learning, and you're specifically looking into that topic with your job at NVIDIA. So maybe you can explain us a little bit where are we standing today, and how far will we actually get that far to fulfill that vision of AI taking over the cumbersome tasks of our everyday life?
So don't worry, we're very far away from it. So we can automate a lot of tasks already, but in terms of replacing a lot of jobs, it will happen at some point, and like Christian said, it's going to be a good thing because it leaves us a lot of free time. But I'm personally very excited about the development in self-driving cars, since NVIDIA is working with a lot of automotive companies. So I am personally very excited about what that's going to mean to our travel time and the commute time. But I do share the same concerns about big corporations owning our data, and we do not have control of that. And in the future, who owns our data will own the resources around it as well. So I think that this is a topic that we do need to explore.
All right. Corporations. I'm turning to Rainer. So you're responsible for IT with the Mondi group. Maybe for those guys not being from Austria, Mondi is one of the biggest companies here in the paper business mainly. So how is this? Do you own the data of every person using your papers for printing their letters? How do you look at AI? How does that influence your business? And how has AI delivered in the past for you?
First of all, I have to say I love the topic. Because back in '97, when I was at the university, my last lecture was about AI. So I'm a pretty old guy. What has been happening in the last couple of years is pretty frustrating, I have to admit. I think we are quite good in taking a handful of sensors and detecting patterns, making predictions out of these patterns, and use it really for making operations better. But just if you think of a typical factory of Mondi, we have around 40,000 sensors in one factory. And we are pretty far off in taking extremely complicated models and make predictions and learn from all these sensors. And even if we make it with the tools I'm not the expert, so I don't have all the tools available at hand. So, but the tools we have in our factories, even if we are able to make these predictions, we then have the human who doesn't believe it. And we are talking about engineers who have been in these factories for 20 years. So we have huge issues in convincing them that these guys believe what the AI is giving them as a feedback. And I think we are then again far off in letting the AI tools run the machines, because this is the ultimate goal. So taking all the sensors, learning from the sensors, having intelligent mechanisms to drive the machines and make it better. On the positive side, we have some convincing arguments or convincing samples when you have a handful of sensors that the things work. But given my intro statement when I was in university in '97, I think we are pretty far off that this is becoming reality.
All right. So Tuomas, you have AI renewal in your job title. So what has to be renewed about AI? How do you look at that from the perspective of Futurice?
Yes, I sort of, the way we define AI renewal is that how do we renew our business with AI and data, as we are software consultancy. And I think that to the previous discussion, the way I also see is that we too easily divide into two clear buckets of current way of doing things and automating or replacing humans. But I see, at least for the next few years, much more interesting is how can we actually augment our existing work with AI? How can we create an exponentially learning organization where we have access and we can actually channel the knowledge of the whole organization to individual person, or give the person sort of proposals. This could be a potential solution, and then the curated options, and then human can choose them. And even if you look at some manufacturing environments, there's actually now a trend that actually going back from pure robotics to actually human and robotics cooperation. So I see this cooperation as the main area where I see that there's a potential within the next 5 years in AI field, not just looking into replacing humans. It might come, but I don't know when, and I don't know if anyone knows when. So in the meanwhile, let's augment humans.
All right. Okay, right. I think this is a very good statement to look into what actually can developers, what can companies do that think about using AI. I think this is a very interesting question to see that there's a lot of potential. There are limitations today. So Christian, when you're in touch with companies, how do the discussions about the application of such technologies, how do you see them going? What could you advise companies that are considering to use more AI in their everyday business? What could be practical advices where to start?
I think one of the main things is that people try to use AI or try to use systems in live systems. So in the final thing, they're like, okay, we gotta have something that our news feed is going to be automatically analyzed and then done, and then they actually subscribe to any of the models of the cloud systems that you can do, and then they pay a lot of money for that. I think it's more interesting to actually optimize your internal workings of your company, that when people upload information into your own systems, then to automatically tag them with, for example, a vision API, or to have natural language processing on the stuff that comes in from your clients. So for me, the interesting opportunities are between the human and the computer interaction, and not like the live system making these clever solutions for people. For example, I'm not happy when Twitter went to an algorithmic timeline. I followed a lot of people, which I found interesting, and now they put lots of things in there that I might be interested in, which is off the mark in a lot of cases. And you don't want your data or your company's display to be dependent on solutions of somebody else that might be in a market that's not there. What I'm very excited about as a European myself is how paranoid European companies are about their data when it comes to using AI systems. And they're like, okay, great, you can do this automatic translation, you can do the automatic tagging, automatic video analysis of videos and emotions in videos, but my data goes somewhere to an American server farm where the NSA can spy on it and other people, and it gets sold to other people. And I think this is a question that much more people should ask. Where is my data going? Where is it going to be hosted? And what are we doing with it? So once we have that when your company thinks about, or I mean, there's no thinking about it, a company should be thinking about using these systems and looking into it. But you should also think like, how much of it can we do behind our own firewall? How much can we do on our end users' machines that we don't own the necessity to keep that data secure, but it's actually in the user. And that's where I find it interesting that with NVIDIA and Intel and other people, there are a lot of chipsets that are coming up right now will allow deep learning algorithms to be embedded in the hardware itself, rather than having to go through some HTTP request somewhere into the ether and then coming back that could be spied on. So the more we can actually do in our own systems and in an automated fashion, then the final product will be powered by it, rather than the final product will be reliant on some third party to do the clever analysis stuff. That's where it gets interesting. And I love it when things work magically. I mean, you drag an image into PowerPoint now and it creates an automated alt text for you. And you don't even need to know how that thing works for end users. So that's the kind of thinking that I want people to have about using these systems and improving their output. A great example is the video insights that we have, where you can upload any video and it creates a transcript of the video and it translates it into 18 languages and it detects the emotion of the text, so you can navigate the video by positive, negative, and neutral. It detects the speakers in it that you can tag and then say like, I only want to hear when that person was saying something on the panel. And that kind of stuff, it can all be automated. And let's not waste time and resources of humans having to do that by hand when 80% of it can be done by a machine already. So this is where your production workflow, I think, is where machine learning today shines, not the final product, because there's a lot of danger of like getting misalignments or wrong information out. And you don't want to be the company where your data basically becomes racist because it doesn't find any, it doesn't recognize any colored people in photos because your system has only been trained on white faces.
Right, yes. So, Charlotte, so NVIDIA was mentioned. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit upon how NVIDIA is looking at AI scenarios and what you're practically doing with that technology already today.
Sure. So we have helped a lot of companies in terms of different industries with a lot of use cases already. So, for example, I think the company sees healthcare and automotive being the first industries to be impacted by AI to the furthest distance. We're seeing examples in healthcare, detecting cancer, drug discovery, etc. And you all know that a lot of companies promise to deliver level 5 self-driving cars in 5 to 10 years. So these are the industries that are being impacted by deep learning the most. But the end goal for AI is to improve productivity and automate some of the tasks that are mundane and can be replaced by human. So in terms of that, I think there's a lot of different areas to go. Maybe not directly by deep learning, but machine learning. For example, in financial services, I heard that 70–80% of the trading is now done by software already. You don't need humans to be shouting, buy, buy, sell, sell, into the microphones anymore. So there's definitely a lot more use cases coming up, and I'm excited about that.
All right. Right. Maybe I turn to Rainer again, since Christian tried to push this a little bit into this sharp image of companies getting paranoid about data being stored in the US. having regulations around their data. And I think this is something that, of course, a company like Mondi has also to seriously investigate, which kind of legal implications, which kind of roadblocks are on this side. How do you look at that from your perspective? So do you see companies being paranoid?
No, not at all. And certainly there is the European Data Privacy Act kicking in.
Right,
and
yes.
You have to comply. That's just a matter of fact. But we are not paranoid about it. And what we, for example, have done is we've done a lot of pilots. And I would say we've taken an opportunistic approach to this machine learning AI. But what we have concluded last year is that we want to screen the entire organization and assess where's the potential, also financially, if we take machine learning AI to the max. So we've run now a 3-month project where we've screened really the entire company, including factories. And now we have, let's say, the bottom line EBIT improvement, what's profit improvement, what we estimate, and it's really massive. So we are talking about the first ideas are in between 10 to 20% profit improvement if we would take it to the max. And this project has generated an idea list of around 100 projects, which we want to implement in the next couple of years. Now the tricky thing comes in, how do we do these projects? And do we have the right resources to implement them? And then I think the big issue starts.
Right. So you're talking about skill set in your company?
Do we have the right skill sets? Do we have enough people? Do we have the right mindset? So this is a huge issue I think we will face. We don't have, I would say, a clue how we sort it, but we are quite keen to just try to give it a try.
Right. Before I turn to Tuomas, since he has a good answer, I guess.
Let's kick this up a notch, though. I mean, the right mindset was a great example for me. I always fascinated when people are against machine learning and artificial intelligence because they say, oh, it's going to come. And I think this is over. It is here. It is here. And a lot of companies that have this kind of mindset are being replaced by faster moving companies with less morals and ethics in other markets. So I always find the discussion about this very interesting when people think we can still defend ourselves against that. We're free of automation. I think we should be more worried about it, and we should be more proactive about it. When an engineer of 20 years says, like, I can't trust this data, then that's a natural thing to do, because that engineer probably feels threatened by that service. So we need to actually make people understand that their jobs are not going away if they use these things, but their jobs become easier. So there's a worry about, I'm actually kind of very annoyed that a lot of magic things that people say that AI does, people take on without realizing how much of their privacy and their data they're giving away, whereas systems that could be automated are stopped at the gate by saying, like, oh, we still have time to worry about this. I don't think we have time to worry about this anymore. It's here.
Maybe I just build on that. But the tricky thing is when you look at our company, the guys who are in the management team, engineers, have been at the university like 30 years ago. And they have been trained to weld something to the machine and just to put steel in somewhere. But you need then the guys who understand the borderline between IT and mechanical engineering, which are just leaving the university right now. And this is a huge issue when you try to build some project work.
True. I think Charlotte was about to answer already, but I would like to go on with Tuomas for a second, since I guess as a consultant you have a perspective on that.
Yeah, I wanted to also comment about the sort of what are the problems and the lack of skills, but I think that the way I see is that there's a huge gap between the envisioned opportunities of AI and the realized ones, and I see that there are several different key reasons. Of course, one that everybody who even works a little bit with AI is the data. The quality and availability of data is and 80–90% of the time of the project goes to actually working with the data. But then, of course, I think that the other issue is the sort of the KPI data. We might have lots of data, but we might be missing the target data. So that's obvious. But then I think that probably even bigger issue is that there's a huge gap between business people and technical people in understanding the opportunities both ways. So I'm not saying that either one is the reason, but there's a gap. So the business people don't understand the opportunities with what the AI provides, and then there's actually a lot of challenge with the engineers to understand what are the real business needs that should and can be fixed. But then the third one is, I think that AI technologies are really also, let's say, not that mature yet. And in terms of there was a mention about democratizing AI, and I feel that needs to happen. So in a way, raise the abstraction level so that we don't need always the sort of the university-educated data scientists to actually work with it. We need to actually make tools available for developers, but as well the business people that actually they can actually figure out the tools and so on. And the other limitation is that currently, because of the custom AI models that we need to build, it's really slow, the sort of the cycle between when exploring the questions and answers. You always need to write code, you need to figure out the data, and it takes too much time and money to actually iterate through the different kind of options. So I am expecting that within the next few years, that the sort of the maturity of AI technologies will help also solve this. And I know that there are big players and small players trying to address this kind of the technical limitations. But I would say that the biggest topic I would like to see is that we have, I don't know how many times more developers than data scientists, but we need to get all the developers on board to actually the AI world and enable them to actually create the solutions.
So Charlotte, you wanted to add on this? Yeah.
So I cannot emphasize enough about the importance of democratizing AI, exactly because not enough people, I mean, every day, your bakers, butchers, they all need to be talking about and understand what the possibilities and impact would be, because I see in Europe the biggest challenge would be data. And everyone in this room knows your AI model is as good as the data that goes in. And in Europe, we don't have the economies of scale like they do in the US and China. And also the Chinese government is putting AI as a mandatory subject in high school right now. So we all need to understand how data is impacting the AI models and make sure that there's some kind of public data pool that everybody can draw from in order to build unbiased and high quality AI models.
Christian, you were ready to jump in here as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
No, he's totally right. The tooling is interesting because with things like Jupyter Notebooks and even like Excel and other parts of Outlook, parts of Office, getting these insights and getting these systems built in, I think we're lowering the entry barrier to that one. And I'm personally super excited going to AI events because when you meet data scientists and developers, it's a much more diverse crowd than just JavaScript developers where you meet the same people all the time. So there's a whole new market of people with insights and asking the right questions. When you said the data is important, it's also important what question you asked the machine to get your model out of it. So a lot of times we have the data, but we ask too broad questions and not too detailed questions, so we still get data sets out of it that are confusing. I like how on the sly some people, like Google, for example, with reCAPTCHA, like when you go somewhere and you try to get a comment and it says like, oh, we want to test if you're not a computer, and you get these 5 images, these 9 images to click them. This is training their data set. Right now you only see like cars and you see like traffic signs, and that goes into their self-driving car data pool. And I love how they basically offer a service for you to keep your forms more secure, but at the same time get data from users that way, rather than just like buying data or training it themselves. So more about this impact of like using the systems and getting them out of it is very, very important. We just also released a free course, a proper university training course online for free about AI with all the like ethics of machine learning, getting into deep learning and so on and so forth. It's a proper course that you can get. You get a certificate at the end of it, and we donated it to several universities, and I really, really want to see more of that. My big scare is when I work with hospitals, especially in America, there's that with that being a hype and people being super excited about AI, a lot of it gets done by one company and they have the better solution than the other company, and I think that's dangerous. With something as powerful as machine learning, we should democratize and open source that much more. All of this information should be shared among companies. That's why I'm going to other companies' events and try to actually tell them what we're doing and getting the stuff from them. I think it should not be who's got the best AI gets the most money. It's like AI is basically going to run the world and run our lives, so companies should share much more with each other. And that's where the current way of getting investment money when you become more secretive than the others is very, very dangerous.
Right. Maybe I can ask one more question to Rainer in this regard. So Charles just mentioned that the Chinese government is pushing that topic into schools. You raise concerns that it's difficult for you to build up the skill set. So is this a task that you as Mondi alone have to face, or how do you yourself see in a bigger societal environment where more AI needs to happen?
In general, it's a society thing. Even Mondi has 100 factories in 23 countries. So we have like China, US. But I see, even if you look at the US, most of us know the Silicon Valley and everything is cool there. Our reality is Arkansas, Louisiana, places where our problem is that people can read and write. So I think you have to deal with it on a country and then regional level. And we are hugely struggling, because even if Mondi would decide now we employ, let's say, 200 data scientists, do we find it in Pine Bluff, Arkansas? Probably not. And we have no clue how to sort that. And we are just discussing concepts, how to do it centrally, do it regional, how to attract talent, how to, if you attract the talent, how to keep the talent in places where we need them. And I think we are somehow depending on society to make that happen.
Right. Maybe from this regard, I can just very briefly comment from my perspective as a university professor here. Also, I'm surprised at stages that the inflow of students into these more technical topics is sometimes surprisingly weak and low. So it must start a little bit earlier than at the university level, apparently, to get people confident to actually try these things out.
Is it also a money problem? I mean, in America, a degree costs a lot of money, and you should not have a degree, need a degree to do that kind of work. I never went to university, and I was lucky to be at the right moment at the right time. That's why I feel like an idiot on a panel like that. But it's, I think it's important that people understand that your interest in this kind of new topic is much more important than having an Ivy League degree before you actually get a job.
Even, for example, I was supporting a lecture at the technical university, and there were like 100 students, and I was asking the professor, is that it? Where's the rest? And she said, no, that's all we have. And I said, yeah, what's happening? When 97, when I was at the university, it was still the same number. So where are all the people going? And I think the shortage will be dramatic in around 10 to 15 years.
Good. Thank you very much. I'm looking at Reka since she promised to collect some questions from the audience. So I believe you're all familiar with the Slido system that we have available here. And I think this is a good point in time to pick up some of the questions. I have them on display here, so maybe I can read them out. And then let's see who wants to respond. Maybe you can give me a wave. All right, so let's pick the first one. So somebody's referring to Steve Wozniak saying in his keynote statement that there is no intelligence in AI. How would you respond to that? Any quick answer to this?
Well, it's in the name, so if you can't parse strings, then we have a problem. But I think I think it's a glib statement by him, and it makes sense because a lot of it's what I mentioned as well. But a lot of stuff that gets sold as AI is not intelligent. It just is a pattern recognition that gives you the insight of intelligence. So when it comes to getting to the final end of proper intelligence, I mean, there's 16 different human intelligences. We cannot simulate them with computers. So I guess what he meant with that is also like we have all this hype about it, but we don't have the intelligence in it. But then I look at my daily Twitter feed, and I think there's not much intelligence in humans by now. So it's a question of like, what do we simulate here?
All right. Maybe briefly, Tuomas, and then I turn to the next question.
Yes. I think that, yes, partially I think that the answer is also that the intelligence is in the data, and then the question like if there's no data, that's the fuel for AI today, so that we need proper data and then the algorithms. And I think that quite many people actually say that there's no competitive advantage in the algorithms itself nowadays. It's more about who owns and what kind of data.
All right. So I turn to the second question. It sounds a little bit like a Mondi question because Mondi is working with trees. So how can AI help protect our planet, or natural environment, natural resources? Anybody who wants to respond? Well, Tuomas was faster.
Yes. And so even more broadly, I think that like this is a long-term topic, but I am really excited about the potential where AI can help us bridge our actions to the actual consequences on many fronts, whether it's environment, whether it's politics, whether it's a company sort of strategy. And I think that really excites, because like humans are in a way that humans are motivated by immediate positive feedback. And most of the action around environment is long-term, uncertain, and typically negative. That doesn't actually drive our action. But if we would be able to actually link our actions to the consequences in 5 years' time and give immediate feedback, that might actually help us change our behavior. And I think the same that we can do on a society level, on the politics and the company sort of strategy. So, but of course, this is not today, but in some years' time.
All right. Very quick question. So, Christian, can you share somewhere the link to your AI course?
Yes.
So maybe you can Twitter it, and the people can.
Yeah. First to that one, the planet stuff. There's an AI for Good group in Microsoft that a lot of people are data scientists move to now, which is really nice. There's lots of good courses, lots of good materials there to see what we do. For example, we helped farmers in Africa to find out where their fields need to be watered by putting sensors in the ground, and that way they saved about 80% of the water and got 3 more crops out of it. We were able to predict crop diseases by looking at satellite imagery and analyzing the pictures of that. So this is where AI for natural good and for the planet is a great idea. Of course, the other side is like using AI for everything and having lots of machines churn through it. We have to start thinking about how much machine power some of these things need, and if that's bad for the environment again. So there's a whole AI for Good discussion. The course, I just looked it up. That's why I was on my phone. I wasn't being rude. It's Microsoft Professional Program for Artificial Intelligence. So it's really going off the tongue quite easily. I will tweet it out later on as well. It's 10 required courses, 8 to 16 hours per course, and it has 10 skills in the end. So for people who go to university, that means something. I think it means a lot of time, but it also means it's very professional about it. So this is that course.
Can I mention, sorry, NVIDIA has the deep learning course as well. It's called Deep Learning Institute, and you can find some courses online. You start with the basic ones like image recognition, general skills, and you can choose to go into specialized areas like for medical or for automotive as well.
And Google and IBM and others as well. It's not just selling our stuff here. It's like, I think it's great that everybody releases these products for free. Yeah. I guess yours is for free. That's what I assumed right now.
Some are for free.
If not, it's now.
Of course, at VU, we also have educative programs for data science that I have to emphasize.
Maybe
so, Kari, you're there.
Maybe I get back to the Save the Planet question. Yeah. But the first case we try to do with artificial intelligence is wastewater treatment. And so there are a lot of applications in that area, or how to look at how we grow the trees and have AI in the drones flying over the forest and helping us with that. So there's a huge potential in that field.
Very nice. So, European data protection regulation. Is there anybody volunteering on this? How does this affect AI scenarios? May that be a roadblock, or can you navigate around it? Charlotte,
I don't know how to navigate around it, but it has something to do with what I mentioned earlier, being the, we need a lot of data in order to make high accuracy AI models work. Without data, it's just not possible. And I see GDPR potentially being a roadblock. And one potential solution is to gather, like I mentioned, have a public data pool, potentially on blockchain, so that everything is distributed and encrypted. However, in GDPR, there's the right of being forgotten. So if you are asking people to be able to erase, then it won't work on blockchain. So GDPR needs to be amended, and talk to your lawmakers, do something, vote. I don't know. I'm not a citizen, but I live here, so I care about this development in Europe.
Okay, thank you. All right, so there's a question on healthcare applications, and maybe that brings us back to Charlotte. Let's see. So how can we trust AI for important life or death decisions? So maybe this can also be interpreted in a more general ethical sense. Well, life or death decisions in healthcare and self-driving cars, when we cannot peek into the decision-making process. Oh, that's such a difficult question.
It's also not a question, it's like a sentence, a letter. There's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, healthcare and self-driving cars. I was scared. Okay, I almost said a bad word. The other day when Google announced their new system that actually simulates human voices, so you actually can do phone calls by a machine that sounds like a human. And the first thing people said, like, oh, this is great, so I can call my doctor and I don't have to wait 20 minutes in the line anymore, but I can a computer. And I'm like, that's the last place where I want a computer to know my information and give it to somebody. Because every time you give out something like your medical history or your medical symptoms, and it goes into a system where I have no insight where that data goes. Next time I'm trying to get some money from the bank, they say, maybe you don't need money anymore because we saw your medical information. This is really not what I want to be in that future, you know. It's so the life or death decision. That's always the philosophical question: will a machine do that? Will it be more efficient if it does that? I think that the bigger problem here is with self-driving cars is that human drivers are just not effective and are terrible. And I'm always kind of underwhelmed when people talk to me about self-driving cars, and I'm like, we have too many cars on the road. With self-driving cars, at least they will be more efficient, and we don't need intersections or traffic lights anymore because the cars will measure distances of each other, and the flow will be much better. But it still will be lots and lots of cars with one single person in them that's going to be used for 8% of the day, and the rest stand on a parking ground. So I don't. It's a very, I would say, sexy way of AI, and everybody gets super excited about it. But at the same time, I'm like, we're optimizing something that should be optimized away in the first place if we allowed people to work from home or use public transport better. So the life or death decision of AI is like, well, doctors make mistakes as well, computers make mistakes, but the answer is already implied in the question. We need more transparency into how these decisions were made. And when something goes wrong, we need massive insights of why something went wrong. A few self-driving cars have been running over people, and it was a headline for a day, and then there was no investigation what happened. We need to find out more why these mistakes happen and what we can do with them. So we need to be transparent in our successes and in our losses.
I want to mention that there's a NIPS debate that you can find on YouTube exactly about whether it matters if you know how AI works. And I think that's great content. I think ultimately it comes down to you decide if you want to trust, if you know someone like this doctor has a 70% of success rate operating your heart, and a machine has 90%. Which one would you choose?
All right. So for the sake of time, I try to integrate the next two questions. So one is referring to lawmaking, and the next one to society and distribution of wealth. Well, how do we want to look at AI? How do we actually need to shape the societal environment in which AI is taking place? Do we leave this to the lawmakers, or how shall we best approach this?
Wow. Every time we need fast turnaround, asking the lawmakers, probably the best bet ever. No. I think there is law problems with that, especially when it comes to privacy and where your information is stored and who's got access to it. But I think it's more important that when the second part, I mean, that's an interesting question, the whole exploiting the poor. It's very much like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about. That will be another panel. I think the most important thing is that people understand that it's not magical stuff that's happening here, that people take a personal accountability to where their data goes and what systems they use and what systems they discard, no matter how cool they are. I always say, like, remember 10 years ago I would have come to you and said, like, can I put a microphone in your house that records everything and sends it to some random company? And you were like, no. And then, like, what if it looks good and it tells you the weather and plays music? Okay, then you can put a microphone in my house. We're actually trusting data far too much. So I think that's the thing that society needs to understand, that convenience of free systems is based on you giving your data away. So you got to make sure that the convenience is really worthwhile, that people mine your data and you get something out of it.
All right, so I would like to close the Slido question with this. I think this was already, maybe I can count this already as a closing statement from Christian.
Well, he just moved his hand, so I don't want to be in his way.
Yeah, right. No, I would like to actually now, since we have 2 minutes left, try to wrap up and maybe give the others the chance still to share some of their general thoughts and ideas of how we should look at AI where is it moving, and what will we get out of it as a society maybe in the long run. So Tuomas, maybe you want to continue, and then with Charlotte and Rainer.
Yeah, and I think I was actually about to also comment one of the questions, and I think my bottom line is that I would focus now in the sort of like giving people superpowers with AI, sort of augmented intelligence, instead of only thinking about completely replacing humans. And I think it's partial answer to the topmost question as well.
All right. Charlotte, maybe you want to continue.
I see a lot more discussions in Europe, and I feel like the European governments, like France, Germany, and UK, are at least talking about it, and the government wants to take a lead of it. That's great. And I think the next step is starting to think about taxing AI, so that making sure that we are prepared for the impact that AI will do to job loss.
All right, Rainer, how do you look at things?
Yeah, even basically the comment from Steve Wozniak was right. I mean, wise guy, wise statement. I think he's right with that. And there's still a long way to go. I think the whole things will come, and we will hopefully see it before we retire.
All right. So maybe from my side, also one statement where I try to integrate some of these perspectives. So I think like what is the bottom line is that we not only need to educate ourselves how AI works, but we also need to educate the people in our environment, our friends and family, and explain them what it is and explain them how it works, such that we can actually overcome that it is used in the wrong way, and that actually its benefits are being blocked, let's say by lawmakers or by companies taking over. And this is becoming or sustaining as a technology that helps each and every one of us in our everyday lives. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for joining the panel.